The more novel part was I was like, what if you kind of invented a new game that's essentially laser tag, where one player's in person and the other person is your buddy in an FPV drone following you around, and you go like two versus two or team. So you essentially have part human, part drones, like laser tagging the other side, which is also humans and drones.
Yeah.
And that could be a super fun, make it safe, like cover the or cage the propellers so people don't get injured.
What is up, creative critters? It's your boy Eugene Choi,
Hey, I'm Jonathan.
And it's Michael.
and welcome to the Pample Pod, the show with candid conversations and creative chaos. As always, we're going to dive right into this week's big question, a question where we're going to poke at and hopefully something that a lot of people in the industry are talking about, and we'll talk about a cool idea with Thanks Mom after that. So in the space that we entrepreneurs are in, I'm sure many, especially a lot of people in hard tech, you see a lot of cool demos of like, in this day and age, there's a lot of like agentic AI tools. I think there was one that I shared with some people earlier. There's like this tool called Manus AI. It's supposed to be like this general AI tool that helps you improve your workflow. You can throw all sorts of things at it, like help process this Excel spreadsheet for me, write this email for me. And Manus is supposed to be able to take on all this stuff and make your life as an individual way easier. And beyond that, there's a lot of other tools where people create and they fabricate these kind of use cases where it's like, this tool can help you life be better in this. It goes without saying, some of these demos, it definitely is a bit misleading, and a lot of it is there to kind of, from the company's perspective, is there to generate hype and try to increase the sales and get as much people interested in buying the product so that you can increase your profit and grow your company. So I do want to kind of spend some time kind of poking at that culture that we have as entrepreneurs. It's like trying to find that truth in that kind of flashy innovation. So the question I want to first bring up is, how can startups and also like research labs even, how can they avoid falling into that trap of what I'm going to call demo-driven development?
That's a good question too, because it is, like you said, there's that demo-driven development, and then maybe the other extreme of that, which is something, JPL's been about and that we've done, is test as you fly, essentially, meaning stay true to your production environment. So one way I might answer that is, if you do a demo for the sake of having a demo and just showcasing something, but it's completely disconnected from the environment you're going to operate in, meaning, let's say it's hardware and actually you work while you're on a tender, but you wouldn't work just on battery, or that sensor noise would kill you if you were outside and not inside a controlled environment indoors, then that's kind of that realm of demo driven that I would say people should probably stay away of. Now, if you do your development testing as you would fly and or in the real environment, and you happen to reach, it doesn't preclude you from reaching points where you can have a valid demo, but just make sure that that demo is as you or in the world you intend it to happen, not some sort of fictitious overselling, overhyping mode.
But I think kind of the distinction between what demo-driven development is, like as you've explained it, and like good technical development, is that I think that demos are sort of something that just sort of like pops out of making a working system. It's that you want to like create a product that works, like the environment it should work in. And of course you have to test it to make sure that it works, but you don't chase the demonstration, because if you chase the demonstration, you're kind of zigzagging between like, oh, let's meet like this specific use case. And in order to do that, you might take like a shortcut and accidentally like lock yourself out of something you need later down the line, or you'll have to redesign the system, or like you just realize that you kind of optimized for the demo. And I think that's the real problem, is that you're sort of like, you have your starting point, you have your ending point, and along that path, demos should sort of just like pop out, or like, and also I think that the reason people will kind of chase demos is because they are useful for certain things. Like if you're running out of funding and you have 1 month of funding left, then maybe your best course of action is to create a demo in 20 days so you can get enough funding to survive, because scaling won't actually like save your company if it's running into hardship. But then at that point, you've already kind of set yourself up for failure. And can you sort of like reverse this trajectory now with more funding? Did the demo hurt you in the long term? So I think there's some value to demos, but chasing the demos is sort of like a recipe for eventual failure. Or at least taking the least optimal route.
Yeah, I definitely do believe demos definitely do have some inherent value. Like they do generate hype, and they definitely do help set a company off to a right direction if planned accordingly. And I really liked how you were talking earlier about how maybe some people, they create the demo, but then like I said earlier, like, and you say here, you do accumulate that technical debt to be able to accomplish that said thing. And when you are looking at these demos, whether it's something that you're seeing in person, like if you're going to like an auto show even, or you're just watching like a YouTube video where like a new product, a new software has dropped, how can they measure real progress? How can they be able to really see if something that they're seeing has substance, something that is like, that has merit, so to speak?
Yeah, it would kind of give you two different angles, I guess. One being what we do or may want to do for ourselves, and the other when looking perhaps at other people's work. Looking at ourselves, essentially field testing and failed field test is where you learn the most. So again, that same exact spirit of replicate your conditions and just put the product out there and see where it fails. Learn fast from that. That can bring you a lot of information too, right? Like leave your software in a room with 24 beta testers and let them shred it and see where it went wrong. You'll learn a lot through that, and you'll learn early, and then that allows you course correct early. And you can still be smart and tactical about how you move along those different sort of checkpoints. When looking at other people's work, it's a bit different. I would kind of look at the, I guess, technical debt ratio. And what I mean by that is looking at all the features that you might look in someone else's demo that are at a prototype phase versus all the features that that thing is supposed to have too. So the higher that ratio, meaning you have a lot of things are at the prototype level, so a higher percentage of the total features are just prototypes and not final features, the more that's an indication that you're still kind of in the sandbox in the early design phase. The more, a lot of these features seem fully fleshed out and you're maybe missing a couple of key parts, the more you can kind of look at that as like, okay, they're advancing maybe more strategically. I mean, of course, assuming that the few that are missing feature-wise are not major roadblocks, like safety or things like that. But that's kind of how I look at it too, is like, sort of out of everything they claim, what percentage of the way are they there versus just kind of claiming to be there?
It's good to think about whether things are like in the prototype stage or whether they're maybe going after kind of the bells and whistles before they have fundamental features like safety implemented. I think that's something to be wary of. I'd say it definitely helps when you're looking at like hype videos. One is the hype video the only resource that you have? Does it come with a data sheet too that like, can give you some hard numbers? Because I'm fine if there's not numbers like in the promotional video, but if they're keeping their cards close to their chest, sometimes that's an indication that everything is not as it seems in the promo video. And something you mentioned earlier is like an AI tool, like the Manus one you talked about. I'm curious whether they compare the work of the AI to like a reference that is known to be correct. Like, for example, like if you ask it to write a complicated script, do you click run on it in the promotional video and you see like what it comes out of it, whether it works or not? If you have it fill out a spreadsheet, is it like actually correct? So some of these things you can't really see, or like if you just see like an engine like on a test stand, it's like, okay, was that like the 1 out of 50 trials that it didn't burn through and then like have an instability and explode? It's very hard to tell sometimes, but having kind of know-how in the industry helps a lot. For example, like you can say like, demonstrating like a scramjet like in a wind tunnel is pretty impressive. Like that's not an easy thing to do compared to maybe like a solid rocket motor or something more simple.
Yeah. A bit of a sidebar, but I was just, you mentioned the whole Manus thing, and I was talking to you, Michael, about how, in their showcase videos, like they show the AI doing stuff and it's showing results, but like who's not to say all of that was rehearsed, like all those use cases that they create, it's like definitely premeditated. So it's like, sure, it works in this one case, this perfect ideal condition you showed, but like, can you see more? Like, I don't know how, to what extent can this tool operate in that? Can it do more things beyond this?
You could have had a conversation with it, train it, clear the screen, it still holds it in memory, and then it spits out the exact result after you've iterated.
And that sort of gets onto like, what's the line between like showing the good side of a product and like lying to people?
Yeah. And this actually, the moment you say that, it reminds me of like that one episode we had about being like honest, like as the spokesperson for a company. If you're a CEO, like how honest can you be without unintentionally shooting yourself in the foot and make everyone suddenly uninterested in your product? I'm sure, like, yes, to an extent, you have to kind of, as an entrepreneur, you are definitely responsible to make sure people are interested in your product. But there is some, at some point you do have to kind of back your numbers, and you can't just blatantly just say whatever you want to say. And like Jonathan, you were just saying earlier, maybe have some numbers to back up what you're saying, have some proof so that the people that want to look deeper can get their brain satisfied with the stuff that you have to show. I think that definitely is, that would be really good.
Yeah. And I think one solid way to maybe do that as someone making a promotional video is to use like standard references or like technology, like what's the state of the art. It's sort of like you can provide a side-by-side comparison in the same conditions. So you're like, oh, like, this camera has this many pixels and our camera has this many pixels. Like that's, the conditions are the same, like everything's the same. You're just like sort of using like a reference people are familiar with and showing how you perform relative to it, like where your strengths are, where you've innovated, maybe like what costs there have been, That's show that.
That's actually really good because I've seen like demos and other posts where people are like, they sell their product and they're saying like, this is the most groundbreaking thing you've ever seen. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And people just say that so easily, but it's like, if people took that extra step, the entrepreneurs, and then like compare what they're selling with what is the industry standard, I think one, it would help boost the company's credibility by a magnitude. And two, it actually shows like, like what you're selling actually has a unique value proposition, and then have something that people can actually benefit from. If it has like that 10x performance or has a magnitude reduction in cost, that's great. But you have to compare what you're selling with what people are using already.
And I'm not sure about the legality of like certain marketing, but I do appreciate when there's a product and it's compared to a specific other product, not just like competitors. And it has like some straw man that's like, oh, like, our products are good and they work and the competitors are rusty and they explode.
It reminds me of it's like those SC ads. And you show like
you don't want like a straw man. Like if you actually want some credibility, like you should have like a very specific, well-established like point of comparison that people are going to be familiar with. And you can back up like what exactly is different numerically.
Yeah. I feel like for me, what kind of going into that ethical line, sort of what's okay, what's not okay. The ones that impress me the most are the ones who distinguish the lab conditions from the field test. Meaning, if your performance necessitates or requires certain conditions to happen, those that come out upfront and say it are the one that impress me the most, because you can rig numbers on a sheet. You see it often. You can rig the competitor. I mean, even for things like 2 cameras, who's to say you didn't shoot with a low resolution on your side-by-side when you do, X camera versus GoPro? Who says you put the same settings exactly, or that it's a fair comparison because maybe one setting exists on one camera and not the other. So you can still kind of rig those things. But I think, to me, the true mark of that, at least intellectual honesty, is like you come up front saying, okay, to achieve this performance, this kind of requires XYZ controlled environment. That's where we're at now, and we're working towards XYZ in the future. Because I think it's okay to sell the dream to some extent and be like, okay, this is sort of ideal conditions, but we want to be able to showcase what the world could be like with our product. And I think that's an okay thing as long as you caveat it. And if you put yourself out there in that way, then you kind of have that sort of very raw, transparent honesty with people. Whereas numbers, you see them be tricked sometimes. There's often a 2x factor that slides in there on performance or side-by-side comparisons even. So at least for me, it's like my trust would really come more from people just being upfront, being like, okay, this is, ideal because XYZ was in place, but this is what we want to trend towards. I'll tend to have a good appreciation for people who get out ahead like that.
I mean, we've talked a lot about kind of like technical demos when you're maybe thinking about like business to business, but even like demonstrations are pretty common in consumer products too, where you'll have like either like demonstrations of like a car's like safety features or demonstrations where you'll just see like, oh, this truck can drive through the mud really good. Yeah. And I think it's all the points that we've talked about apply to evaluating those demos like in a more like consumer aspect. But there's also just sort of the case of knowing when a demo is kind of emotional versus when it is like practical.
Yeah.
Like kind of like what it's appealing to, like how does it make you feel? And does it really matter what's being demoed? Like, are you going to use the features that they're showing off? If it's like a blender and they put like, I don't know, like, they put like, I know. So they put like, I don't know, rocks in there. Like, look, it blends up the rocks. I'm like, why would I need that? Yeah. Why would I pay an extra $100 for a blender that can blend up rocks?
They're delicious though. But to your point, like with trucks, it's like you may, be a city dweller and you're never going to even roll through the mud. But the thing is, they're probably selling the experience of the life you want to have at that point more so than the actual technical merit of the truck.
And if you, want to have a truck because like there's certain like things associated with it, it might be worth it. But it's important to distinguish as a buyer, like the reasons that you want something, whether it's emotional or practical or kind of status.
Yeah. And then it's less in the It's less on the tech demo side and more on the marketing and storytelling side,
for
and
sure.
more on the kind of advertising.
They overlap sometimes, but
yeah, they do get mixed. Yeah, a lot of times it is both worlds coming to meet.
Mm-hmm. Right. Those are some really good points and a lot of things that listeners, watchers, and ourselves included can practice in our daily lives. So with that said, let's move on to the next segment. Thanks, Mom, as we're going to talk to Mom, aka ChatGPT, to generate 2 awesome words for us to ideate around and create hopefully a very lucrative business venture that we may have to do a tech demo for in the future.
Well placed.
I'm very curious actually what would some demos look like for some of the ideas we created in the past. It'd be really interesting.
yeah.
Every idea we
Hit
pitched
us. Let's see
today.
what we've got.
Yes, sir. All right. For this week, Mom wants us to generate. Okay, this actually is. Last week was more tame, but this is the most bizarre one. Jellybone satellite.
Jellybone.
I don't know what a jellybone is. What?
I've never heard of a Jellybone.
All right, we're gonna make it up as we go.
Yeah. Well, let's see. All right. Well, as the host, I will start this time. So actually, I was struggling for a little bit, but this did remind me of an idea I had for like at least a year or so. I thought of it a year or two ago. And so essentially what this is, and I could be totally wrong in terms of the physics, but Jellybone satellite for me, an idea was an orbital debris removal satellite constellation that can use non-Newtonian fluid to capture flying material. So because I know the idea with non-Newtonian fluid is that normally it's just like liquid and stuff, but if something fast and hard hits it, then it turns rigid. So the idea was like essentially you could have like, in my head, what I was thinking before was that you have like these satellites in the shape of like a window pane, and then you fill in the gaps with like some sort of like non-Newtonian fluid or something like that. And then whenever small specks of debris and stuff, because I know like a lot of like orbital debris is like really small, so that they could just get caught in something like that. And then you could just accumulate a lot of debris with that and maybe somehow remove it or something like that. I don't know how like the physics necessarily work if non-Newtonian fluid can survive the vacuum of space like that or something, but that was one idea I had before. And I think it kind of fits the prompt here, jelly, squishy, but like rigid like a bone once it experiences like a high level of stress. But what are your thoughts?
I wonder how you dissipate energy with that fast an impact.
Yeah, it's some things go really fast. That's true.
Well, maybe it's good at dissipating energy. Now I'm thinking like once you have that hole, you need to, once it goes back to liquid, you need to plug it up again somehow.
It's true.
So it doesn't go out.
Yeah,
So.
because a lot of liquids, like you have to be worried about just evaporating because you're lowering the pressure outside.
Yeah, or we need to surround it with some self-healing mesh, but that might be a bit of a development effort too.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it though. I think there's something like fun about it.
A lot of R&D for sure. Yeah, but I remember this was just some pipe dream I had before. I was like, oh, can you use non-Newtonian fluid or something like that? Because like I know orbital debris is just becoming more and more of a problem, especially how do you handle like really thin specks like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, all the stuff you can't grapple easily.
Yeah, you can't just grab it or something. Yeah, with a crane or some things that people come up with.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of had the inkling of an idea that was sort of like that. That was like a satellite that sort of uses some sort of probably like gelatinous mesh. That's not quite it's like a viscoelastic solid, more so than a non-Newtonian fluid. And that helps it like absorb energy as it like sort of like eats other satellites.
Yeah.
And
Pac-Man for space, basically.
yeah, exactly. So it would be kind of large. I was thinking maybe you could do something smart where like the delta V from getting hit by a satellite helps you reach the next satellite to like lower the amount of orbital energy or the amount of propellant you need to carry on board.
Like as you get impacted from one, that
It can. You sort of like position yourself so that the delta V is not so huge you both get obliterated, but it's also enough that like you go on a trajectory that then you can sort of adjust a little bit to hit another piece of debris.
That'd be an interesting optimization problem too.
Yeah, very interesting because
hop to all your different debris or position yourself so you can like capture them all.
That would make a really fun simulation thing to generate. Like how do you all these things that are moving somehow you have to hit everything perfectly.
That would be a great demo.
That would be
sure.
that'd be an awesome demo. Just get some camera up there and just watch that thing happen in real life.
Yeah, that'd be quite an impressive demo.
Yeah.
I was going to that, so I wasn't sure what Jellybone was. I was fixating on that one, and I think for a while I was thinking Funny Bone. So I was thinking still along the kind of lines of like human body, And satellite in the sense of, it's also something that orbits, but it's also something that's like peripheral or surrounding, right? So I was thinking of essentially, it could be like a flat sheet looking thing, but something that you can essentially roll, maybe break a tab and it'll become a cast. So if you're out hiking, you twist your ankle or you get injured or you're somewhere and you need to go to the ER, it's basically you can kind of roll it around whatever injury you have, press a tab, it'll maybe crystallize something on the inside. Now it becomes rigid and you have something to hold your arm in place or hold your thing, but it's a very light, flat sheet that you can put in the backpack and then, morph it into shape, click it, have it become rigid, and then help secure a person. Maybe you have a neck injury, you want to use it and like to, place it around their neck, like solidify it and then help transport the person in a way that's more stable than if you're just like, all right, like you might have a broken neck, let's
if you have I think that's really good. And something I would like to add on top of that, have like some sort of like cooling surface on it too. So because for some people, if you sprain a joint or something, break your arm, like it starts to inflame a bit. So you could have it thing wrap around and have it cool down a little bit. That would help quite a bit, I think.
The crystallization process could maybe be endothermic.
That'd be interesting.
So actually, on that note of like broken bones or something, I was thinking something that was space related, but it could also be something on Earth as well, which Jellybone satellite could be just the name of like some calcium or bone marrow supplement. I was thinking specifically like for astronauts. When you're up in space, you don't have the same gravity pulling you down, so your bone density the bone mass tends to decrease like by 1% or 2% per month. So I was thinking some sort of supplement. I don't know. Like again, I could probably get fact checked so hard on people on Reddit or YouTube or Spotify. But if that could work, that'd be really good for astronauts or even people who are. I was looking into like people who are diagnosed with like osteoporosis. Even maybe if you have some sort of calcium supplement that can help replenish the bones and like have it take care. That might be pretty good. I don't know. But that was my idea.
I don't know. That just made me think of like you have some sort of like satellite candy that has like a bunch of protein and like growth hormone packed into it. And it's like, oh, like this is what they give to astronauts to keep them from losing bone mass. But like you can use it for bodybuilding.
Jellybone candy line. Astronaut Jellybone.
I could see that marketing campaign.
But very dubious.
Yeah.
Ethically. Yeah.
Big real field of study behind it with astronaut health in space for sure. Yeah. Could you just have it as a supplement you eat? TBD. Maybe there's. Tough question.
Maybe it's a orbiting gym that like docks with your satellite. And that way it's sort of like, like multiple, obviously I was actually this is just an idea that pops into my head that would not be feasible unless you had many, many satellites that don't want to have the space. It could be almost like maybe a medical module that has like a standardized docking port and that you can move it like from satellite to satellite. So like if there's some sort of emergency on like the ISS, but it's currently docked on like a different space station, it could detach and then like fly over there, then reattach.
Okay, like a shareable module, but across orbital paths or something.
Yeah, it would be very difficult you'd have to think about, like sizing the propellant and like if you could change those orbits or where it could service. But it could be interesting to think about modules that once you have multiple space stations, I know right now there's only really one.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Like, as you have some trade that starts happening at a station level where you have like essentially a cargo ship without taking the actual shuttle, but, take essentially a cargo container and that goes back and forth.
Because I'm thinking, I wonder how much you would help like deconstrain at least the cost of a specific space station if you have some sort of like contracting agreement between multiple stations where it's like, hey, we're not going to have to worry about building a gym on a space satellite if I know that we're going to share this one module with each other, for example.
Especially for things that you don't need all the time, but that are important to have, periodically. So maybe like an exercise module could fall into that because you don't need it 100% of the time, but so it could potentially like service one person and then when they're done with it, go to someone else. You'd have to think about what modules kind of fall under that are useful, but not constantly required.
Yeah. And the periodicity at which you need it needs to be low because gym, I would wonder if you still need it every other day and shuttling back and forth every other day.
Much, yeah.
But there probably is something that you can use on a monthly basis where it's like, it's okay to send back and forth because you don't need it for 3 weeks. And so rather than have it sit there, maybe you can rotate, ride share.
That is definitely something interesting to think about, like, because you have people trying to create, like you have VAST, and then you have other people trying to create space stations. Assuming like maybe 50 years from now, once we're at that level, what kind of interactions are we going to have between space stations? That is a really fun thought exercise to have.
Yeah. Like if everyone's trying to bring everything, it's probably not going to work. Right. But if some things can be split up, it might be better.
Shared resources.
I was thinking maybe like a science lab, maybe even like if you have like some, even I guess in this case, in terms of considering like geopolitics, maybe you have some allied countries, they share like a lab that they can just share from like the US, the ISS maybe, or with a Japanese space satellite station or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
like an instrumentation suite you can share, or rather than everyone bringing up the same mass spec, like just send one and share it. or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But then you probably want your own space to work in and data connection, so you send it over there, so
Mhm.
it's yours to work in.
For sure.
Nice.
Well, that's all the ideas I had. I'm not sure. Did anyone else
I
come up
had
with something cool?
two more. One, because I'll start with the non-Newtonian one. I did have one non-Newtonian
Oh,
idea.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's a bit different. I was thinking like some of these crash suits that you have, whether you're on a bike or some other circumstances, like they typically have inflatable airbags. And I was wondering if there's a need for having a sort of a non-Newtonian liner in there. Because I'm thinking when you hit a railing, the airbag is good, but you still have, part of your body that's against the railing and two other parts that want to keep on going.
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder if these could be rigidifying elements that help provide like back support or lateral support, so that you have the airbag plus also essentially sort of
You're distributing the pressure or
Exactly.
the force over a wider area.
so it's not just like two vertebrae taking everything and then, the rest of your body like trying to go around the railing.
yeah, sort of like how soft armor works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where,
So
like, instead of being like the pressure of a bullet on one small place, it's distributed over a wider area.
Yep. Exactly. Because, you have a lot of cool technology, but I know they use a lot of airbags, but I don't believe they use non-Newtonian in a liner to help against, because a lot of time when you have serious crashes or when you see motorcycle crashes, it's like on a railing on a highway, for example, or you have like, the sort of concrete divider as well. So the problem is when you hit it halfway, well, half of you's hitting the divider, the other half is like, the physics aren't really kind. So I'm trying not to be too graphical, but
Yeah.
that could be an interesting augmentation to, I guess, what already exists, which is these airbag suits and stuff. So Jellybone, obviously I was kind of thinking of like bones jellifying, and then satellite, again, the sort of spirit of surrounding the body, being something peripheral. But the last one I had, unless someone had another one.
No, it's just
Go for
I
it.
had a handful
Yeah.
of other somewhat
Go for
whatever
it.
ones. I was thinking about maybe like deployable inflatable booms. It could be for a satellite or it could be for something else, but like
Okay.
essentially like those wacky inflatable tube men
In space.
it's that but slightly more rigid, and like you could put like an antenna dish on the end. Well, your pointing matters a lot, because if it's on the end of something inflatable, you're pointing
You're pointing everywhere. I mean, your coverage is great. Anyway.
well, actually, there's some cases where that could be useful. For example, like if you have a low gain antenna, that's just for redundancy on a spacecraft.
Yeah.
You don't really care about its pointing. In
True.
fact, it might be useful to have it jiggle around a little bit. That way, like if you lose connection because your high gain antenna is pointing in the wrong place, you want very wide coverage on your low gain antenna. So having this sort of boom might be acceptable for like where pointing's not super important.
In the back of my mind, I'm just imagining a docking mechanism that is the wacky inflatable tube man, like world's worst mechanism to dock with. But for pointing, like sometimes randomness is a good thing, to your point. So maybe you have a sort of more omnidirectional system, but like by moving randomly, you're able to get decent coverage on a lot of areas of interest. So there could be good in random.
Yeah, and you very
randomizing.
easily hit harmonics, I'm sure, with this system too, where it would like get stuck in a frequency. So there might be some use cases where
That's
either
true.
the bad pointing is acceptable and the very low mass is useful. Maybe for like an antenna for like a radar even, where you have like a long boom that goes out and you're not as concerned about waving. I'm not sure whether that's acceptable.
I wonder if you have like it's almost an argument for randomization of pattern, maybe for like enemy avoidance. It's like if you have a predictable
never look
scanning
the same,
pattern,
yeah.
or even like if you I guess that's one end of the spectrum. If you're the one trying to, if you know your radar location and the scan patterns, you can kind of play with that. Whereas if you have a randomized pattern, it's probably a little harder to do something about it. You're like, maybe they see me, maybe they don't.
Or they might misidentify you because you look different than you used to.
That's true. I'm just picturing someone looking at their radar screen and they just see an inflatable tube and they're like, I don't know what to do with this.
Okay, what was your last day?
So the last one I had was, I was thinking satellite, not quite literally, but I was picturing a drone that can bump into things at first, which is not super novel. But then the more novel part was, I was like, what if you kind of invented a new game that's essentially laser tag, where one player's in person and the other person is your buddy in an FPV drone following you around, and you go like 2 versus 2 or team. So you essentially have part human, part drones, like laser tagging the other side, which is also humans and drones. And that could be a super fun, make it safe, like cover or cage the propellers so people don't get injured. But that could make for, laser tag with some really interesting dynamics, because now you're dodging people and drones. So that could be kind of interesting. Right?
That's fun, yeah.
Probably decent defense case to, provide training for also some of the real world sort of battlefield stuff you see. But if anything, it could also be just kind of a fun like modern take on laser tag /
Yeah.
maybe paintball even, I guess.
So now the question is like, how do you get the human operator and the drone to be able to like work together, like the pilot in charge of that? That might be an interesting challenge.
That's for the best team to get the best tactics and win, and to show us how Jellybone laser tag is done.
Yeah, exactly.
Jellybone satellite.
Yeah.
Right. And so with that note, I think this is a good place to wrap up the episode. If anyone has any ideas or thoughts to share about when it comes to investigating flash innovation, please put in the comments, whether you're listening to this on Spotify or watching on YouTube. We would love to hear from you. And if anyone has any awesome ideas for Jellybone satellites, feel free to share. I think you can go a lot of different directions with this, and we'd love to hear y'all out. So with that note, thank you everyone for listening to this episode, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. See ya.
See you next time.